stays regional, I think, still the demand is there for solar panels. I've seen numbers as high as 140 million ounces of demand in the solar industry. We're likely going to approach 100 million ounces of demand in the automotive sector this year. These industries are moving fast.
All right. Well, not to sound cynical, but if this does escalate into a more severe military situation from an industrial level that impacts silver in a number of ways, first and foremost, war is good for silver. As cynical and as deranged as that sounds, correct me if I'm wrong, but a number of weapons, including Tomahawk missiles, use a lot of silver. We were chatting about this earlier, and about 500 ounces of silver goes into each Tomahawk missile. So what is the industrial case for silver in a war climate?
Well, first off, what a waste of silver. Having that silver spread all over the place is a terrible use. I'd rather that silver go into, the green energy, the green movement, and, electrifying the planet in ways that we're trying to accomplish. But, it is, you're right, used in a variety of military weapons and tools, from navigation systems to weapons. And, it's just one more, use of the metal. We're seeing solar panels, we're seeing electric cars, now we're seeing military weaponry.
On the flip side of that is the industrial use of silver may decline if we do see a global recession as a result of this conflict, if it doesn't spiral into a military escalation any more than it has, or even if it does. Certainly there's going to be an economic impact from these sanctions, and one could assume that that would lead to an economic slowdown. We were already sort of toying with the possibility of a recession prior to this. What would that mean in terms of traditional silver demand on the industrial use case for everything from cars to fridges to electric appliances? Do you see that hampering that demand?
Well, hopefully this stays regional. God forbid this gets more broad, throughout Europe and elsewhere around the planet. But, if it stays regional, I think, still the demand is there for solar panels. I've seen numbers as high as 140 million ounces of demand in the solar industry. We're likely going to approach 100 million ounces of demand in the automotive sector this year. These industries are moving fast to electrify the planet and get fuel combustion cars off the surface of the earth. So I don't think that's going to stop unless this war really escalates out of control.
On one of the fundamentals driving silver, solar panels, is this move to clean energy. You just referenced solar panels.
Mm-hmm.
One of the issues that has come up, that has been highlighted, is, of course, the major dependence of oil and gas. And many are seeing this as a wake-up call to those that have been advocating to reduce oil and gas and fossil fueled energy, saying that perhaps this has been too aggressive a move, and it's time to scale it back a little bit, to slow down the move away from fossil fuels, and that perhaps that pushes the targets for going green a little further off on the horizon, that the restrictions on oil and gas may be loosened in response to this. Does that have a near-term impact on the price of silver?
Well, it's hard to say. I think that you're right. I think that thesis is coming out more, among the experts, that the new Green Deal and, going green is not going to be as easy or quick as some politicians would like it to be. Getting off oil and gas, it's a great goal, but it's not going to take 10 years or less. This is a 50-year process to change the electrical grid on the planet. And that's going to take a lot of silver and a lot of copper and a lot of other metals to accomplish that. And I think the politicians are being unrealistic. And I think this war, now, it's very energy intensive. And I think, countries around the world, I wouldn't be surprised to see Germany, for example, turn on their nuclear plants again. We're already seeing talks in Japan about them turning on their nuclear plants. So politicians are waking up to the fact that some of their objectives or goals are unrealistic.
But it doesn't change the long-term trajectory, which is positive for silver.
Or even short-term. I think that because the demand is so great, the amount of ounces we need is so great. Like, we're producing 800 million ounces a year as a mining sector. And you said yourself that we're consuming this year 1.1 billion ounces. That's a 300 million ounce deficit. Where's that silver going to come from? How long can you have these deficits before there's just simply no silver left?
Well, let's break down that number, because that was according to the Silver Institute forecasting a record demand for silver this year. setting a record at 1.112 billion ounces. That's beating last year, which was also a record at 1.02 billion ounces. So that was before we had the situation in Ukraine. Do you think that that is going to change, that there's going to be a higher demand than what we're seeing? Or what was forecast rather by the
again, if you say yourself, a cruise missile needs, 15 kilos of silver or 500 ounces of silver, hopefully they don't have to build many more cruise missiles. But, I think there's not enough silver around anyways to supply the auto industry and supply the solar panel industry or the electronic manufacturing industry. So we know the deficits exist, whether there's a war or not. I don't think that changes anything.
Now, we touched previously on, of course, the greenification of the energy grid. And President Biden still has a goal of 100% clean electricity by 2035. 100% clean electricity 2035 and zero emissions by 2050. How realistic is that in terms of where the silver supply is?
It's not practical. I quite honestly, I don't think we'll ever get off oil and gas. We'll use less of it, no doubt about that. But it's going to take time. Do you have an electric car?
No.
No, and I do not either. And I think I only have one or two friends that have electric cars. So that industry is just starting. How many years is it going to take before all of us have electric vehicles? Another 10 years. I have no plan to buy an electric car anytime soon. So at least 20 years before we replace the above ground fleet. There's 1.4 billion cars sitting on the surface of the earth right now. And the auto industry is producing 95 million a year. So at that rate, that in itself is 15 years. That's assuming every car produced from today forward is electric, which is not going to happen.
So a bit out of touch there with the gold, but help me understand the disparity between the projected demand for silver and the projected supply.
Well, your number that you threw out earlier about the 1.1 billion that the Silver Institute has estimated for 2022.
Yeah.
I've heard numbers as high as 1.4 billion for 2022. So, whatever the number is, it's more than we're producing. So these ounces are coming from somewhere. There's a limited amount of silver sitting on the surface in investment hoards. Once that's gone, there's no place to get the silver. So one thing has to happen. Silver prices have to go up. So how long is it going to take for the mining sector to react? It's a decade, 10 to 15 years to get a mine into production from the day that the management teams decide to bring a mine into production.